Hi, my name is Faisal Qureshi. In today's retrospective, I talk with Faheem Jafar, Manager Portfolio Operations at Revenue New South Wales. We talk all things project management, his journey into project management, his transition into PMO, and also his hobby of teaching project management through his private practice and also at university. Hope you enjoy.
So thank you so much. We have Faheem Jafar with us today, who is currently working with New South Wales Revenue, formerly used to work at MasterCard. You're working in the PMO space. So I guess let's start with a bit of a background or a bit of a history, maybe, going back 5-10 years, and then we'll see where we go.
Okay, thank you very much, Faisal, for inviting me. Really appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. So at the moment, I am with Department of Customer Services, and within the Department of Customer Services, there are multiple agencies. Revenue New South Wales is one of them, and I am basically the portfolio manager for Revenue Digital IT. So, PMO portfolio within the IT environment. I've been in the industry for almost 27 years, shows my age now. And
you don't look it though.
You can cut this if you don't want to. I'm happy. No, I do get that quite often. But yeah, so I've been lucky enough to work with pretty good organization since the start of my career, way back 27 years. I worked with organizations like NCR, IBM, HP, and MasterCard, Optus. Quite a few I've worked in, and then all these organizations over a period of time. I learned a lot from everywhere. MasterCard was a good experience for me at a regional level, so I had the PMO at the MasterCard. And then I did a bit of a consulting. I've got my own small consulting company, Propec Consulting, training and consulting. I did that for Essential Energy. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been an absolutely very rewarding and satisfying journey. So.
Excellent. So what I want to touch on the training part, but we'll come back to that towards the end. Just a quick question. So what I'll do is let's talk about how you maybe got into project management. And then your journey into doing, say, the portfolio and the PMO, and then we'll go into how you got into or why you're doing the whole training side of things, right? So, so your experiences, you've been in the industry 27 years, and so how much of that is involved in project management?
I think it's a very good question. Let me give you a bit of a history of it, how I got into project management, because that's a very interesting thing. I started as a hardware engineer with NCR. So, and back in those days, hardware engineer was a big thing. So I did my electronics engineering from the university. I was a fresh graduate, applied for a role, got an interview. I think it was my second or third application that I sent through. And in those days, we used to write an application and send it to. There was no email, got an interview, got selected, and I started as a hardware engineer. I used to fix ATMs. Automated teller machines. So this is how I started. But over a period of time, over 2-3 years, I realized that, probably hardware is coming up to, miniaturization was happening. So I started getting into a bit of a software understanding, operating system, Unix, and a few other operating system. Luckily for me, I worked in an organization that was, that helped me grow, and that helped me grow in my field, and my manager supported me a lot in my aspiration. So I got into they used to have a role called systems engineer, so somebody who would look after both hardware and operating system and so on and so forth. And this is where I started getting into doing a little bit projects. But in late 1990s, around 1999, 2000, I happened to have an opportunity to work with NCR. They were rolling out new software within Gulf. I was at Middle East. I was working in Middle East at that time, and I worked on that, and I enjoyed it. And I think project management, I didn't know at that time what project management is or was. But I'm by nature I'm very organized and a very methodical person. I'm known for it among my friend circle as well. And I think it just came naturally to me. And like they say, the rest is history. So you can say probably 21, 22 years now.
20 years. Okay. And so that's actually a really interesting point that your personality fits the PM role, right? So, and a lot of times I've seen it, especially in my case, I guess, is you try to maybe go into an area that you think might be good, but then you realize my personality doesn't really match. It's not my temperament, etc. Right? So, just on that, apart from being organized, what else attracts you to the PM role and to the PM work? Is there anything else other than that? I mean, I know being organized is one thing, but what else is it?
I think it's important whenever if you're doing a job, if it aligns with your personality, if it's something that suits your personality, I think by nature we as a human we excel. And you can say that it was just by coincidence I went into project management. I did a bit of a study at that time. I had a very good mentor, somebody who guided me on that and said, "Oh, do this and look into this." And so I think it's good to have that kind of a mentorship. But for project management, one of the key things is to be able to work with people. I always say projects are delivered by the people for the people, right? And if you're not able to work with people, and people are difficult to work with, we all are different, diverse culture, different background, brothers and sisters living under the same roof are not same, right?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, I've got to probably have a good grasp of how to work with people. Not that I'm always very good, not that I haven't had my share of dealing with difficult people, but I think that's what gets you. And that's what connects with me. I'm pretty easygoing. I think so. But I think that's the key with the project management. You need to be able to connect with people and talk to them and communicate with them. And if you have these couple of things, it makes you work.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. So, in the previous discussion that I had with Meg last time, and we mentioned, I think we mentioned the similar thing, that the success of projects, and especially even as a BA, like stakeholder management and stakeholder engagement is probably the number one quality that you need, or not just quality, but one thing you need to focus on for it to be successful, right? In terms of projects, so people is one thing. Have you found that the type of people it differs depending on the levels, or differs between, say, industries? I mean, what's your opinion on that one?
What do you mean? So you mean the dealing with the people in different industries, or is that?
Yeah, so it's probably a two-pronged question. One is, so in my background, I found that people, depending on which industry you work in, so I come from a telco background. So in telco, they have a certain way of working, and then now working in financial services, it's different again. And then similarly, depending on the level of the type of people that you're working with, whether it's C's or senior leadership down to people in operations, you need to have a different tack to get their engagement, to get their buy-in. I'm assuming it's you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you're doing a project, I think one thing we need to understand is project is not simple. In fact, when I teach project management to people who are trying to get into project, I always say that you have to consider three things before you really think about whether you want to do a project management or not. Number one, be able to work with people and be able to communicate. If you're not able to communicate, no matter what level you are, if you're intimidated by a C-level person, and you need to give a status update, and you're saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to hide this," and that's not project management. So you need to be able to have the confidence to communicate. The second thing is the ability to nicely say no. It's a very important thing in project management. People come to project management and say, tap on the shoulder, I want you to get this done. I want you to do this, or this is what we want to do. As a project manager, it's your role to assess what the request is and be able to say, you know what, Faisal, I don't think so. Yeah, it's a good idea, but it's probably not the best for this project. So, and people don't like to hear no, right? Especially CISO. So, and the third one is project management is very stressful. You need to be able to manage stress, right?
Yeah.
People management is very stressful, whether we like it or not. And that's what it is. So keep these things, is these three characteristics of a project manager. And if you think about in any organization, whether you're telco and IT or payment industry, financial thing, people have different responses to project requests, right? So you need to be able to tailor your response and adapt yourself and adopt the environment that you are in into it. One thing I have to say that, and over a period of probably as I grew and matured in this field, I realized that if you are able to articulate what the problem is and what the issue is, I found C managers, C-level stakeholders pretty understanding, because they need to run the business as well, right? And then I've been dealing with C-level for almost 8-9 years now. And people are smart when they're at C-level, right? So they understand, right? So I think that's the thing. Just don't be intimidated by it, by your stakeholders, but work with them. So that's all I can say when it comes to this.
So I mean, that's a very good point. Just I know you mentioned a lot of things, so I'm just going to go one by one on. So especially when you talk about not being intimidated or dealing with stress, saying no and all that. Do you find that it comes with, you get better with practice, or is it something that you have to have, or how they say you need to have thick skin? Is that something that you develop, or what's your opinion on that?
You absolutely learn to manage these three skills over a period of time. As you do projects, and especially what helps is if you're doing projects in different industry. I've been lucky enough to do projects and I deliver projects in IT, in telco, even at public service. So you learn these skills. You learn to, as with period of time, as you deliver project, you mature in those skills. You're absolutely right? So we pick up these things. It also, what happens is over a period of time, as you deliver more projects, as you work with people, you tend to intentionally or unintentionally establish your own rapport within the industry. People, you may not realize it, but when you do a good project, if you do a very important project, people tend to refer you as, oh, somebody, he did that project, he did deliver that at Westpac, because people who work with you. So I think you're absolutely right. You learn these skills, and there's no end to it. I have to say that it's a skill that you have to keep working on, evolving as you go along,
and tuning and tweaking.
Exactly. If I look back at my career, how I deal with work with C-level stakeholders or even my peers, I think I was totally different about 10 years back. Totally different. So I think, you learn these skills over a period of time.
Yeah. Excellent. So just another thing that you mentioned earlier as well is that you had a great mentor, right? So I think just from my experience, again, I think mentors are hard to find, or rather, if you're looking, then I think they can be hard to find. And I think those people who naturally who randomly come across them, either through their current work or whatever, I think I consider to be very lucky. So can you maybe tell us a bit about the mentor that you mentioned? I mean, what was it that what did they tell you, or
It's funny you said that, because I never looked for a mentor. I don't think that anybody really looked for a mentor. But over a period of time, as you work out, and this is what happened with me. I connected with someone pretty much wherever I went. I ended up connecting with someone in a way that I learned from that person, and I said, okay, I need to work with you. So, at the start of my career, I was at NCR. I had a very God bless him, he passed away. General Manager Badrul Islam, NCR Pakistan Badrul Islam, a wonderful gem of a person. And I was fresh from the graduate, and he kind of guided me. You don't need. For me, mentorship is not that I'm going to spend 2 hours with you or 5 hours with you every week. It's what you can learn from that person, right? And what information then. So I think that's went to IBM. I happened to work with absolutely wonderful people. I learned from them. I was at Optus. One of my manager, he's Australia-based, Ibrahim Dani. I still call him boss. I learned, you build these relationships. There's no hard and fast rule how you find a mentor. It's just you connect with someone, you learn through them. And I also think, and that's probably you may find strange, I think when you are in a mentor-mentee relationship, you are also passing on information. You're also passing on some skills to your mentor. People may not realize that. And I'm a big believer on that. I don't think so. It's a one-way traffic. I think it's a two-way traffic.
It's always a two-way. Yep.
It's always a two-way. So we all learn from each other, right? So I don't know if you know. There's a I think about 10, 20 years back at I don't remember the organization. They started this concept of reverse shadowing, where C or senior stakeholders would shadow with a new intern or new hiree in the organization so that they can learn the new skills that the new interns. So I think about late 90s.
Okay. Okay. So because I think just on mentorship, I mean, a very traditional way of thinking about mentors is, okay, you have someone, you know, one or two people that tend to guide you all throughout your career, right? You know, when you're starting young, and you may change a mentor, you know, if you become like a mid to senior level manager or whatever, then it's someone else. But you make a very good point that mentor can essentially be anyone that you learn lessons from, right? And it's always that back and forth. So just on that, if I do a slight tangent to go on to say networking, because I think the way you answer that, it sounded like you're also very proactive in the way you network with people. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I'm definitely not an introvert, so I will call myself somewhere towards an extrovert. So I'm never shy to break a conversation in a meeting, but I'm also not somebody who would just go out for drinks for networking or something. I'm just not that kind of a person. But yeah, I think I try to connect with people. Yeah, pretty easily.
Yeah. And so just on that again, so so if we go back to the whole personality thing, right? So you mentioned just now about being an extrovert. So I consider myself to be an introvert. So is there a certain type that you feel fits more well into the PM role, or have you seen both working well in that space?
No, I have. In fact, I have seen both working in PM space, and I don't think so. I can say that PM is only for extrovert or solely introvert. If there are a lot of introverts I've worked in who were able to communicate the right time in the right way, and absolutely ended up being a gem of a project manager. And so I don't think so that's the project management profession is for any particular personality type, but it is definitely for someone who has got the skills to communicate and work with the people. So
yeah. And so when we talk about just again going back to people management, so when you define, say for example, general management just being like, it's a BAU that you're looking after either operations or people, and it's just continuing, right? And whereas project management tends to have it has a definite deadline. Does that differ? Do you see, in your experience, does managing people for a project, and when a project finishes, do people change, or do you find that the interactions and the relationships, they change because the project is now finished, or do they tend to become more relaxed? Or
I think it goes can go either way. I do tend to think, and this is something that I think I've learned over a period of time. I'm still trying to brush up my skills when it comes to it. I try to stay away from the word project manager as much as I can. Okay. I think the concept, and we can give credit to Agile 20 years back, but they were the concept of servant leadership. And I think as a project leader, you need to be able to work with your team and make them work with you, and realize how you do it. So I think there's absolutely a big difference between the general management and project management or project leadership. What I have seen, and during project delivery, you build a lot of relationship during project delivery. You talk to your suppliers, you talk to your contract, your team members, you talk to CE. and people relate to you the way you have treated them throughout the project. Like I said, project is a very stressful, right? If you are stressed as a project manager or a project leader, and you lose your cool, and I I had my own share of the going do these things when I was going through this whole process, and everybody goes through it, and I would say that you tend to lose faith and trust of the people. But if you keep your calm, if you guide them, and I think that's what really helps. So I would say absolutely the relationship that you build during the project, they tend to. I'm still in contact with people who I've worked with 20 years back. Just because when you spend some stressful time together, spending nights rolling out IT, and I started with IT project management, so I think yeah, you're absolutely right. But I have to warn one thing. I have to warn you about something, and I must say always, the life of a project manager can change in a split second. You have to understand that if everything is going well, you're probably the love of everyone, that's a project manager. But if something goes wrong, and that's not expected, the fall is pretty steep, pretty quick. So,
and it's not just for the project leader or project manager. I think it affects the entire project team, right? Because it's
but
not.
Project manager has to take the sorry. To
correct. No, you're absolutely right. The PM
Yeah.
is responsible for, is
Exactly.
ultimately accountable. But I think at the same time, I've seen in my experience where the team was also can sometimes be blasted for, look, why didn't you do this and this and this, or or something was missed or something was not delivered correctly. And so it's very interesting that that even though, and I just want to do again another tangent. When we look at the traditional material for learning about project management, I don't think there is enough emphasis given on the people aspect. It's all about the technical nuances of you need to do the business case and whatnot, and make sure your resources are considered, your costs are considered, but the people aspect is I think it's something that is still a bit of a you can never know until you actually go in and know the people, right? So the question I want to ask, right, is and I'm gonna apologize. When you when you're contracting, for example, as a PM, you are thrown into, for example, when you get hired for a new company or new role, you're just thrown in and go, okay, go start. Here's your project. You need to run it. But then the relationships aren't often there, right? So have you found, for example, a benefit where you've been in a company, say, 6 months or 12 months or even more, versus someone you've just been thrown in and then you have to start a large program or project?
Yeah. Now, I think, number one, to agree with you, you're absolutely right. A lot of education of the project manager, and I teach it to the university. I teach project management at the University of Sydney and at Torrens University. The focus is on technical project management. There is a bit of a focus on they touch on people management, stakeholder management. That's only up to kind of a technical view of stakeholder management. You do these stakeholder assessments, you do these things, right? They don't teach you how to work with the stakeholder. And I think that's a big gap in our academia when it comes to project management. So to agree to that. The second thing is when you talked about, when you're coming new in an organization or coming new to a project versus somewhere you've already worked, absolutely makes a difference, right? And that's one of the reasons of project management is whenever you're starting a new project, go and have a look at the historical data and lesson learned. Don't try to reinvent a wheel. So if you have worked with somebody already, so it's easy to continue with that relationship, right? And projects are all unique. One of the things that I just wanted to touch on, you mentioned about management and general management, project management. In project, you're always developing a unique product. You're doing something different, so you don't know. All right, general management is you're doing something on a day-to-day basis. It's business as usual, right? Regular operation. So you know what's going to happen. If you say yes now, this is what people tend to have flow charts and process flows for general management things, in operation. Whereas you can't have that in project management. When you're doing a project, you never know what's going to happen. So I think that's if you work with people who have you delivered a successful project, of course you're going to have fun. But if you if you run into the same people who were part of the project where you struggle, you're going to have the same problem. And I've been on the both sides of the spectrum, to be very honest.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, that's the right. But I think that's what takes me. That's what motivates me. I have to say that, working with, trying new things. And I'm probably not someone who like to stay and do one thing over and over again. I think as a project manager, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I think it aligns with my personality. I want to make sure that, something keeps happening, right?
Yeah.
My wife used to have a complaint that I can't even sleep over the weekend. I get up early and go out and do in my garden. So it just shows, maybe.
So again, and so that's so I guess that's just a personality thing, right? So obviously you can't change yourself as to who you are, but you try and make it fit into the work that you do. Talking about you mentioned Agile in a previous response. What impact has Agile had, in your opinion, on PM work?
Yeah, I think significant. When it was introduced about 20 years back, 21 years back, I don't think a lot of people realized how much it's going to have it. But I think over a period of time, Agile itself has evolved. Now there's so many flavors of Agile, right? Safe Agile, XP, discipline Agile, and so on and so forth, right? I don't think the original Agile is there, except for the manifesto and the core principle, the core values. But more than project management, Agile has impacted the industries across the globe. So we talk about business agility now, and that, I think that has a much bigger impact of an Agile, making people realize that there are faster way to do these things, right? And I have to say, I was an Agile skeptic for a very long time. It's only last 5-7 years that I said, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and to an extent that I've started teaching it now. But yeah, I wasn't really sold to Agile for a very long time, and I think there was a reason for that, because and it's true even today, you just cannot apply Agile everywhere. Like, well, where you give you example, if you have to answer your question in how Agile impacts, if you're doing a construction or a manufacturing, Agile won't work, right? It's just won't. So Agile doesn't work with metal, where the metal is involved or concrete is involved. But if you're doing a software development, and that kind of product development, yes, that works. It has significantly improved our product development. At one end of the spectrum, the Agile approaches, and over a period of Agile has matured. But on the other hand, I think it has confused people also how to do the work. What to do. Every organization, you ask them, oh, we want you to go Agile. Okay, what are you doing? I'm doing daily stand-up. Okay, what else? Oh, that's Agile. It's pretty common. Seriously, I mean it when I say it's very common, right?
That's right.
And then, so I think that is what has happened. It has, people don't understand, but it has, especially in the last 5-7 years, it's become a buzzword. Everybody wants to do a business agility and become Agile. So,
I mean, yeah. So I've been hearing Agile for the last 5-7 years, right? And you mentioned that you were an Agile skeptic before, and now not so much. Is there anything particular about it that works, in your opinion? I mean, what is it about it? Oh, sorry, what changed your mind?
Yeah, I think there are some good things, and especially I like the way the Agile has now started to look into the lean approach. Merging with the lean approach, that's something that really interests me, and I think that is a workable thing, and that approach can be taken in any industry for that matter. It's not, and I'm now, by the way, I'm now talking from project management office point of view, PMO point of view, because you can take a lean approach in project management, and then you can define lean governance, you can help reduce waste, and that can apply, right? But the reason I was Agile skeptic was everybody was pushing Agile. Oh, we have to go into Agile without understanding what really Agile means, right?
Yeah.
I can still tell you, and you can quote me on that. You get 10 Agile project managers in a room, and ask them about the core values, the 4 core values, and ask them to explain what they think about it. You'll get 10 different answers. People People think there's no planning in Agile. That's a very wrong perception. Agile believes
Mm,
in planning. It's just that planning duration is short term, not the long term. So
mm,
all those core project management principles are there. It's just a different way of looking at it.
mm.
And that's one of the reason is Agile is not defined in a very, it is kind of prescriptive, but it's not really prescriptive at all.
It's just a framework, right? I mean,
It's
that's what it is.
I
Yeah.
would say it's an approach. It's not even a framework because anybody can just go and do whatever you want to do. Take these four principles, or look at the 12 manifest, four core values and 12 principles, and okay, yeah, whatever suits you.
Mm,
So I think that's it. Certainly has benefit in product development, software development, um, but probably, and now everything involves some sort of product development wherever you go. Even if you're manufacturing an aircraft, there's a bit of a product development in there as well. So
mm. So would you so coming from, so I'm assuming, coming from a traditional waterfall project management understanding, and now working with this whole agile, which is new, would you say that people who have had experience working in waterfall and now where they see agile, they can actually better mix and match the two versus someone who hasn't worked in waterfall at all and they just do purely agile? Do you see a difference there? I mean, have you come across that at all?
yeah, big difference. I've come across this a lot. In fact, people who have no experience of waterfall have no idea how other industries do the work except where they have done the agile. And this is, and I keep running into this. Oh, we have to do this. Agile. This is agile. Well, hang on a second. Well, there are other things that. So I think, and that I might be a little bit biased to it, so because I've come from a waterfall background. People who have done the waterfall or predictive approach, yes, it took them it can take them a time to adjust, but they bring the knowledge of another approach as well. And I think once they are sold, and my example, once they are sold to agile approach, they can make much bigger difference in the industry and make it more successful than people who are just agile. It's just like the new generation, they have no idea what manual gears is in a car. Everybody's automatic here, right? So you need to learn different technology and approach. I think that's what I would say. But again, things are changing. To answer your question, absolutely, there's a big difference. People who have just done agile.
Yep. And you mentioned, just going on to the topic of planning, you mentioned planning at the start, where waterfall tends to be a more thorough planning, where long term, to understand what we need to do, etc. Right? And whereas agile is a shorter time period. With projects, the delivery of a project is technically time bound, right? It's either 6 months, 12 months, whatever. Have you found that when we look at the planning and then the scope of what needs to be delivered, have you seen that in agile it tends to change quite often?
Yeah.
As compared to?
Yeah, that's right. But that's the whole idea of agile, right? So agile is not so traditional project management, you have those triple constraints, iron triangle: scope, budget, and cost. Budget and cost has to schedule and cost has to be constant. If you're changing scope, or you have to manage these three, right? If one is changing, you have to manage the other two. In agile, in agile, and that's the bigger approach. Scope, the only thing that is probably somewhat restrictive is the time bound, right? Sprints, 2 weeks, right? But the scope and budget is not. In agile, you cannot put your hand on and say, you cannot say, put your hand on this is the scope of the work and this is the budget of the work. That's not how agile works. Agile does say, yeah, within 2 weeks, we'll see what we deliver. I'm just giving you an example, sprint 2 weeks or 1 week, right? Or within, one release, we will do this. So I think there's a big shift. There's a big shift in how the traditional approach, and it is very difficult. And because of this, agile is not successful most of the time, is because our organizational hierarchy, agile doesn't work in a hierarchical environment. You have to have, the whole concept of self-organizing is exactly flat structure. So, and that's why in agile there's no project manager. That's a big difference between agile and project management. Now that is something different. Now we have this agile project management as well coming up. So Agile has no project manager role. So I think over a period of time, Agile is evolving. A lot of people don't know there was no concept of BA role in Agile when Agile was first introduced. BA was introduced, I think, now 7-8 years back. It's just product manager or product owner. So yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think in Agile, it's the product owner which takes most of the responsibility in terms of what needs to be done, right? So the reason why I asked that question, right, is I know, for example, in sprints, you do your sprint planning, whatever, and say whatever number of user stories that we're trying to deliver is, it's not met, or something needs to flow onto the next cycle. But if something, do you find that, for example, things if they keep getting delayed or being pushed over into the next sprint, then ultimately you get to a point where you realize, we don't have enough time. Our go live date is X. We need to do something. We either push back our date, or we either add more resources, or we descope. Is that fair?
Yeah. So I think what you're explaining me is a hybrid environment.
Okay.
So I'll tell you why. I'm a big believer in hybrid environment, right? I'll tell you very honestly. Because I think traditional approach is here to stay, at least in my lifetime. I don't think it's going to go away, right, across the world. And Agile is picking up. There's a lot of favor coming up. Discipline Agile is one of the. If you haven't read about Discipline, please do that. And attend my course. But that's another thing. Safe Agile is there. Agile actually says there's no limit to time on. We're going to do an MVP, minimum viable product, and if that MVP is somebody, if we get an MVP, is the concept of MVP is that you test the customer response to whatever you're doing, 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever you want to do. And if you get a good response, then you're going to go and build that product without any scope, definite scope and budget. And that's a big difference, right?
Okay.
That's the big difference. Whereas in traditional project management, you build something. And then towards the end, you give it to the customer, and customer say, "Oh, you know what? That's not what I asked for." And I'm talking about product development, right? But that's the main difference between Agile. So in Agile, the point Agile is saying that at any given time during your product development, or your maybe 10th sprint or third release or whatever, you decide this product is no more viable and it's not giving benefit to the customer. So the whole concept of Agile is customer satisfaction. If the customer is not satisfied, stop there. Don't try to spend more effort and time just because you think you need to complete it. If your customer is saying, that's it, don't need any more, or we don't want this, stop.
Does that happen though? How often does that happen?
It does happen. I don't know. Listen, it really depends on the organization as well. So I think the way, and this is where the challenge is, I still have to work in a very fully agile organization. I don't think so. I haven't had the chance to work in an organization which I can say, hand on my heart, yeah, that's an agile organization. The closest I worked in where the delivery was safe agile, and business was trying to become an agile, and I set up a hybrid PM over there to facilitate the governance. But I think that's a problem, because agile is, we have to understand, agile is really very IT centric. It is very IT centric, right? So if you are in a construction or manufacturing industry, their IT company, their IT products delivers maybe agile delivery, but you can't build a bridge using an agile approach. You just cannot, right? So, and I think that's what the challenge is.
Yeah, and I think especially working in IT, I'm only looking at project management from that IT perspective, right? IT viewpoint. So it's fascinating that well, it's in terms of what you've just said, and also in my own experience, that the hybrid seems to be the best compromise between the two in terms of what you're trying to deliver versus going either one way or the other. Can I ask you one question? So in terms of coming back to planning, right? Working in hybrid projects in the past, I think I found that the best planning that was done was using, for example, a schedule, right? Microsoft project, you schedule it out, and then you somehow try to retrospectively apply some of that into your sprint planning. Because if you try to do it the other way, where if you have a large, your tribes and what's it called, tribes and whatever,
Squads,
squads and tribes. I just hate these terms. They come together, you're trying to do sprint planning. It just becomes so hard because it feels like a lot of those discussions are purely discovery based, right? You're trying to discover, oh, okay, so you're doing this. That means, oh, I need to think about that. But then if I'm doing this, then, oh, you need to think about this, right? Whereas if you have a central MPP, I think it helps to guide the discussion. I don't know. That's been my observation. Do you agree with that, or?
Yes and no. Listen, and this is where it's very hard. This is where I don't think that there's any pure agile organization. Maybe there are. I haven't come across because you have to have agile has to be top down. It cannot be bottom up, right? Like
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So organization has to let you do your work. So in agile, the whole concept in agile is self-organizing team.
So you mean bottom up, right? Bottom up.
Sorry, bottom up. Sorry, the other way around. Sorry. Thank you. Bottom up. It has to be bottom. It can't be top down, right?
Yeah.
Teams have to be self-organizing, right? And that's the concept where hierarchical organizations find it very difficult. Now, IT companies, a lot of IT areas, even if you pick any bank, a lot of big banks in Australia and across the globe, their one or two areas may be agile, but the whole bank is not, or whole financial institute is not. Similarly, an organization where they have that, so they are very successfully done in one area, but the other area is probably still struggling with the agile concept. So I think it is a learning. It's gonna take long time, just because it had the hierarchical structure had. So I'll give you an example. So one of the key things, and in agile these days is, and especially at lean portfolio, which is safe concept as well. Investment funding, has to be you get a certain amount of money, and then you at a portfolio level you decide how you're going to spread the money, right? It's just not possible in all the organization, right? Because every organization has somebody has to own the money. You can't just say nobody owns this money, it's for everyone, and you as a team decide who you want to give this money to, which projects needs to go. I think that it's going to take time, the whole mindset. That's why Agile talks about agile mind shift and mindset shift rather than just doing the work. It's certainly a way to do things. It's certainly a way to do things, especially in IT. But I'm not sure if it can be successfully implemented in other industries where we deal with manufacturing. It's going to be. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It's probably take a long time.
Maybe it needs to evolve a bit more until it becomes applicable to other.
It's evolving. It's evolving, right? It's already agile is evolving, and I think that's the beauty of project management as well. And we, like I said, why is it evolving? Because people like me and you are giving feedback. This works, this doesn't work. So key feedback is a very key thing in project management, which is a very big thing in agile as well. You have to kind of self-reflect and say, okay, you know what, this works, this doesn't work, so let's make it better. So I think that's the key thing.
Oh, excellent. So let's move on to the PMO or portfolio side, right? So you mentioned that you've been working in the PMO space or in portfolio management. So can you maybe give us a definition of what that is and how that differs from project leadership or project management?
Oh, difficult question. Project management office or PMO space is kind of as an entity within an organization that helps deliver the projects, right? Now, traditional definition would be provide governance structure, and I try to stay away from the word governance because it kind of say, I'm the policeman, I'm going to tell you how to do it, and I try to tend to stay away from that. I said, it's kind of your project manager's buddy in helping deliver that project. Setting up the framework, giving the tools to help deliver the project. And I think that's the better way of explaining the project management. Now, The PMO is actually a conduit between the project delivery and the business strategy, organizational strategy. So if organization hierarchy or execs needs to know what's happening with the project, and I'm not talking about one project, we're talking about 10, 15, 100 projects across the organization or your division. PMO's role is to make sure that they have up-to-date status and the true status of those projects, not the watermelon status. I don't know if you're familiar with the watermelon status. That project is red inside and green from outside. So not the watermelon status. It's project manager. PMO's role is to make sure that they assess, whether the project is not a watermelon project and it is calling out. Because one of the things that we find in project management is project managers tend to are very biased about showing the project as green rather than red. And as a PMO manager, if I see a project green for a very long time, maybe 2-3 months, and so there's something seriously wrong, man. What's going on? You cannot be green. There's something, either it's amber or it's red or something. So I think that's the role of the PMO, provide the governance structure, basically, how the framework, tools, and techniques. And the most important, which is a very big thing for me and something that I'm really doing a bit of research on, is benefits realization, which is, the success of the project is not that it's delivered on time or within budget. It's what the value it has delivered to the customer and how is it helping organizational strategy, how is it helping organization meet its goals. So because projects are investment, right? You're putting your investment into getting some ROI.
And is the function of PMO or the PMO office, is that typically applicable to large organizations only, or do you find that it's all is ads applicable to even the small medium size?
No, it's a very good question, Faisal. Thank you very much for asking. In fact, PMO role is PMO as an entity can exist in any organization, but one of the challenges with the PMO is that it is the role or the team is usually a management overhead. So unless there is a way to make this PMO a revenue generating arm for the organization, it's hard to justify if you have small in a small organization. So a big organization, they understand you have got 100 projects or 200 projects. In small organization, you can have a small simple flavor of the PMO, which a lot of organizations tend to use it. And traditionally people tend to, when you talk about the PMO, they say, oh, okay, I'm going to get my status report. PMO is not only just getting you status report, it's just one of the 30 functions that PMO does. So if you have a small organization, but you're doing business critical projects, high level dollar projects, yes, you probably need a PMO, but otherwise there are other ways to manage your project.
And sometimes you may just have, for example, one person who's a PMO, and you have many, say, for example, business operations or teams that are running their own projects, and maybe that person, he or she, is providing a bit of guidance as to how to run projects, even though they're not dedicated project managers, right?
Yeah, right. So I think, let me just explain. So when we talk about the PMO is, let's say, a few things that are key to PMO operation as a PMO operation. Like now, PMO can be, by the way, project management office, program management office, portfolio management, depending on the organizational hierarchy, right? So let's say in a general project management office, so it's how benefits realizations framework, how the projects, whatever the value they're going to deliver, how the organization is going to measure them and sustain them so that they can get the benefit out of the investment. Resource utilization, resource management, across the projects, projects have a definite start and end. So you need resources across the organization to deliver it. So what's going to happen to those resources, whether you have those resource skills that you need projects delivered or not. Then there's a financial management is another function. Portfolio level risk management is another function, right? How you're going to manage. So if you're delivering a project X, and by delivering that project, you're going to organizational risk management, risk threshold may be impacted whether you should do that project or not, right? Status reporting, that's across the portfolio. So one entity who knows exactly what's happening at the portfolio level or across the organization on all the projects. I think that's these are the key functions, and the most important is strategy alignment. So prioritization and selection of the project. Now, if you are a senior exec and you want your business needs a project, it's the role of the PMO to say, oh, Faisal, yeah, it's a very good idea, but probably better to wait for division B because they're doing similar work and their work will benefit you. So looking at the holistic thing, which area to prioritize, which project to prioritize. I think that's a key function of the PMO.
Okay, so the PMOs, so they're doing so in terms of strategy alignment. It's also serving a function like a check and balance as well. So to your CIO or whatever or CTO. And so when you talk about, for example, the benefits realization and focusing on that, right? So for example, at the start of the year, the CIO, CTOs come, they come over, they say, look, we want to work on these projects because we want to take our organization from here to here. It's either whether it's digitization or whatever, right? So, but do you find that, for one thing, is because technology is changing so rapidly, that's one thing, and then what's the key thing that you look at in terms of the benefits and then realize, or the benefits or the outcomes, right? So has the measurements, the way you measure, has that changed over time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So yes, and I think one thing to consider is benefit realization varies from project to project and deliverable to deliverable, right? It can be tangible and intangible. Like intangible could be brand value. You might do a project. Your organization may have a strategy to increase the brand image in the organization, in the market. So they may initiate a project to do something about building bigger brand. So that's in kind of a thing. Or you can have a tangible financial benefit. You may do a project to gain market share. So the measurement of the benefit is totally different, and you need to work with the benefits owner who's responsible for that benefit to measure and then track it. Now that's one part of it. So in fact, if I split benefit realization, it has three components: and identification. So what is the identification? What benefit is the project is going to deliver? Tangible, intangible. Measurement. Once the project is doing it, execute and measure. You measure that. How long will it take those benefits and to deliver? And the third part, which is the most important one, is the sustainability of the benefit. If you do not have a plan to sustain that benefit, then what's the point of doing? Because that's the whole idea of it. So a lot of organizations are struggling over here. They get the project done, but they don't have a plan to sustain the benefit, right? So, and the problem with benefits realization is that projects closed, done and dusted, project manager and team goes away. So who's going to measure the benefits? Who's going to keep track of the benefit? This is where the PMOs come in. Right. They work the benefits owner even after the project is closed to make sure the benefits are sustainable and based on what they were forecasting. So that's a key one.
And sorry, and this conversation can keep going and going. Right? I'm actually having a very good. I'm actually learning a lot, to be honest. In going from was it a conscious decision to go into the PMO space, or was it just out of happenstance or accident? What was the?
No, this was a conscious decision. So about 11 years back, so I've come from a project delivery background and I've done program management. So I was at basically at HP, and I had finished an assignment with HCO in Canberra, and I came back to Sydney after a year and a half in Canberra, and there was this new account that HP was. I was part of the HP APJ competency, project management competency, and they won a contract with one of the energy providers in Australia, and the team was looking for PMO manager. And because I had worked in IBM and HP, so I had full understanding of the PMO. I opted for that role. So I said I wanted to do that, and I must say I really enjoyed it. In those days, it was a governance function, a lot of governance function. Like I said, it kind of gelled with my personality, and I think that's all I can say. That, and since then, I have been into PMO. Started with a traditional governance approach, and now I'm a very firm believer that PMO needs to adopt, and PMO needs to be flexible governance, to to match the disruption that is happening around us. We need to be very agile and responsive, and PMO needs to be very responsive rather than traditional step-by-step approach.
Yep.
But yeah, it was a very conscious decision, and I'm glad I made that. Well,
and just on that as well. So working in the PMO space, I know people who go into it directly without doing any or not doing too many projects work, whatever, right? So are there any benefits or pros and cons of going straight into the PMO space without having done PM work?
There definitely. So I'll answer this question in two, and I'm glad that you asked this question. We talked about project management, teaching project management at the university level.
Mm-hmm.
There's no academic course for PMO, not that I have come across in Australia or across the globe. We teach project management. In universities, they teach project management. There is a postgraduate certificate, there's a graduate certificate, there's a master's degree, but there's no project management. So PMO is taught as a kind of a subject within the project management degree.
Like a little thing.
Yeah, it's a very little, right? And it doesn't do the justice to the role that it is. It's an extremely important role. Now, I hope, and I hope the organization, academia, universities across the world recognize this and focus on developing a PMO-based, typical PMO. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people from project management move into PMO, because they keep interacting with PMO like me. So, okay, hang on a second, this is something. And if there's one thing that I want to do is probably develop a course for PMO at the university level. If that's my wish, if I can. To teach PMO, how the PMO needs to function. That's something you can call it my dream, if I can.
Yep.
People who have gone into PMO directly, they have either come from business or technical IT degree, mostly IT degree, right?
Yeah.
And because of my interaction, I think most of them have come from, it's a nice graph I need to create, there's a reporting I need to do. I think they probably do not get the full gist of how the PMO needs to function. Whereas people who have come from project delivery, because they have gone through the project delivery, they can, and I could be biased because I've come from there, I think I can understand the pain of the project manager. So when I'll give you an example. In one of the organizations, when I went in as a PMO manager, there were about 45 templates for project manager, multiple topics. I'm talking about, risk management, issue management, they're all, I cut those down to 15. So hang on a second, it's waste of time, right? So I think that thing kind of help, because, it's always good to have a bit of a background what you're doing. It doesn't mean that people who have not done the delivery are not good PMO candidates. It's just that it's a different, people who have done delivery, they bring a different flavor and experience to it.
You can relate better to the.
It's easy. Yeah, I think they're much more practical. Let me put it there. I think they have a much more practical view of project delivery than so.
Yeah.
And if you have that kind of thing, then it's easy to tailor your approach.
Yeah. So let's move on to the teaching aspect, right? So you run a consultancy where you give trainings on project management, and then you also mentioned that you teach at
University of Sydney
University of Sydney and Torrens. So can you tell us how did you get into teaching and why?
I always enjoyed teaching, to be very honest. I've always delivered when I was at organization 10 15 years back. There's an opportunity, you needed to run webinars, and I'm talking about 13 years back, which webinars was a big thing. And it was not video webinars, it was just audio, you run the slides and everything. And I did a lot of trainings, I ran courses, dropped in, and I enjoyed it because one of the things that when you're teaching, when you're sharing your knowledge, then you're picking up the stuff from the other person as well. So I think that, and it's just got me going. And, in 2014, I set up, I had finished off with HP, and I set up Propac Consultants, which is my training and consulting company. It's a very small company. It's not a big thing. It's more like my hobby, if anything else. I run trainings on project management, project management certification, discipline agile. And it started as a hobby.
Okay.
And one thing that you probably don't know, in 2018, I at a very late age, I decided to do PhD. So I
Oh wow.
joined University of Sydney to do PhD in project management office. So I started. So I spent about a couple of years there, and during that time, I had an opportunity to go and teach to undergrad students. So I enjoyed that. That was my first. This 2018, and since then, I taught for about a year, and then I took a break from University of Sydney, and then had an opportunity. I started teaching project management at Torrance University to postgrad students. I
No.
think I enjoy it. I like it. I really
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a yeah. I think that's one of the reasons. So I think I enjoy it, to be honest. I really enjoy it.
So it sounds like it's a natural progression of things.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Maybe I think I never planned for it, to be very honest. Teaching aspect is just that in fact, I'm probably not going to continue with University of Sydney. Hopefully, I just need to cut down a few things. I also put a stop to my PhD for some time. I put it on hold for. I had my fingers in too many pies. So.
Otherwise, yeah, you're too busy, and
Yeah, it was getting too much. I still want to do research. I still have. Hopefully, I can do it. But the age is catching up, and the time is short.
yeah. So how much have you got left to complete that?
A PhD? Oh, a lot. I did my for 2 years, and I was doing part time, by the way. So
Okay.
so I did it for 2 years, and in fact, this April I put it on hold. This April. We'll see how we go. We'll see. I may go back.
And with ProPrac, what do you have to have in place to be a trainer? I mean, is there a certain qualification you need to have, or I mean, how?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. So ProPac basically I came up with this project practice consultant, ProPac consultant.
Okay.
But the ProPac is fine. When I set it up, so that was the time I started with PMP. I was in fact I had a partnership, one of my with someone in US, so I started running courses for them as partner. As their local Australian local. So I ran courses, and then because I was a PMP, I could do that. But then, somebody contacted me. They wanted to do a project planning course. I said, "Oh, okay, I'm more than happy to do this." So I ran a one-day project planning course. Somebody came and said, "Oh, we want to do how to set up a PMO." I said, "Okay, fine." So I just ran a PMO, one-day PMO course for that. So over a period of time, I started building my own
Your own material,
collateral, yeah. But I'm still doing project management training. So PMP is my, PMP and discipline agile is my key training that I do. And I'm a PMI authorized trainer. So thankfully, PMI realized that they basically made it mandatory for trainers to be PMI authorized. So there's a certain qualification you have to go through it. Yep. Otherwise, everybody was trying to do it, and the quality was not good. But yeah, it's good. So yeah. If anybody wants to do a certification course, you need, especially PMI or any other organization, you need to go through a certain credential, certification, train the trainer kind of a thing. But if you have industry experience and if you want to run a training, the sky is the limit. Just need to build your brand.
And are your students with ProPrac, are they seasoned professionals, or are they mostly new to the profession?
No, mix. I sometimes get fresh university graduates. My last course that I conducted in September was seasoned professional. One of them was portfolio analyst, probably a young candidate. Some of them had more than 6 years of experience and so on and so forth, some 10 years. Yeah, it varies. The good thing, there's always a silver lining, something. COVID kind of a, before COVID, when I would reach out to overseas and I would say, I can run a training, online trainings, and no, we are not interested. You won't believe how many online trainings I've run in the last 2 years.
Oh, really?
I've lost count.
Okay, well, it's a blessing in disguise, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've done it for, across the globe, right? So
Right.
for Middle East as well, for Indian subcontinent, for Central Asia, Australia, New Zealand. My candidates are usually from Australia and New Zealand. That's my main market. But last course I had somebody was in Russia, and there was one in Pakistan, and there was Middle East, and so on and so forth. So
Oh, excellent.
yeah,
Excellent.
it's good.
So I know, I think we're probably close to time. I know I dedicated 40 50 minutes. We're well over that. So what I will do is I'll include the link to your site, etc.,
That
in
would be
the
good.
descriptions, etc. So if
Sure.
people want to reach out to you and or your course, they can do that.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you so much for this chat. I think there's probably a lot of other things that we can maybe do a deep dive in subsequent discussions if you want to come back. But yes, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you very much, Faisal, for inviting me. I didn't even realize how much time we spent. I enjoy talking. It just shows you're a pretty good host, man. No, I'm happy to come anytime. Yeah, but you look after yourself and good luck.
No, awesome. Thank you.
See you, man.